LitRPG is a genre that thrives on exploring possibilities. Where a video game has to use game mechanics and abstraction because it can't fully simulate a fictional world, LitRPG has looked at those mechanics and thought, wouldn't it be cool if the world actually worked like that? And it's right, it would be cool. It's a cool form of magic system. Where before you would play a game to experience some of what it would feel like to be a character from your favorite stories, now you can read LitRPG to see what it would be like to be a character from your favorite game. In a new medium, the gameplay systems can be expanded on in ways that would be unreasonable to program. Hyper-specific classes and skills and specializations that explore all those possibilities that the player imagines but can never play because it would be insane to develop them all. So with all that endless possibility and a perfect game engine limited only by the imagination, why are protagonists turning into spellswords like the evolution reinventing the crab? Now, before you tell me about your favorite MC who sticks to their niche, I'm obviously exaggerating. Not everyone is becoming a spellsword. Some of us are getting void magic. There is a very real sort of skill carcinisation happening where characters trend towards a similar amount and style of capability. Their actual capital S skills and how they get things done might be very different, but they're doing the same things. LitRPG is also a genre rife with power fantasies. Whether you consider that a virtue or a criticism, either way it is a fact. And a lack of power really doesn't fit into a power fantasy. Expectations about the strengths and weaknesses of ranged and melee carried from LitRPG's game roots means swordsmen are often locked out of the utility of magic while mages are squishy. The obvious solution? A spellsword. Not only stronger but also cooler with all the up-close action of a warrior and overwhelming firepower of a wizard. The natural conclusion for a power fantasy. The same logic holds true when you move away from the example of spellswords. Almost every character with a theoretically non-combat class will be able to use it to fight and kill in some manner, so they're not locked out of that aspect of LitRPG, that pillar of gameplay. Similar to spellswords, LitRPG has at times seen waves of devourer types, people who gain the abilities of everything they kill or actually eat, void or corruption mages, who exist to act as a counter to basically everything, and minion masters, who either have a summon for everything or can use their summon's powers themselves and gain every skill under the sun that way. All of these archetypes are often complained about, yet remain common and popular because they provide one simple thing: main characters who are good in every situation, while maintaining the pretense that they're somehow balanced. After all, they have a specific skill set, they're specialized in a particular skill. It just so happens that that skill is having a way to access or counter anything. This is what I have called the specialist problem. A large part of it boils down to the idea that specialization is good and useful, but the ultimate measure of success in the vast majority of LitRPG is winning a fight. So every protagonist has to compete on the same playing field and meet the same requirements. And as a result, they naturally trend towards being generalists who are never caught out and always effective. And even when combat isn't the issue at hand, most MCs are lone wolves. Without a party to offload other skill sets to, they need to be able to handle whatever crops up themselves. Hence why pure martial types don't work. You need magic to wave away other problems. Beyond simple indulgence in action scenes, there are more reasons why characters carcinize to generalists the way they do. Some of it is a genuine limitation of the nature of the magic systems. With how high LitRPG can scale and power, there comes a point where some logic breaks down. At the level where the mage built for firepower is wiping cities off the map, the rogue built for speed is practically teleporting. If you can't spare the points to put into defensive stats, that means the mage loses that duel before they even know they're fighting. The same magics that are hard to balance in other fantasy genres, like speedsters, are difficult here because they should provide overwhelming advantage. Whether knowingly or not, many writers in the genre seem to naturally negate that by having defense outscale offense. If a story gets to the sort of level where mass destruction is on the table, it's usually understood that battles between these powerhouses won't be over quickly. The people at the top are difficult to kill. That might just be narrative expectations seeping into the world. Later, higher level battles should be more important and take more time and effort, so of course the villains at that level are harder to kill. For our protagonists, this means certain classes fall to the specialist problem more easily. Swordsmen may be able to hold off for a while before the arcane beckons them. Rogues and assassins, on the other hand, are jumping into magic the moment it's on the table. Some stealth and little teleportation, anti-magic to counter detection and shields, they carcinize into generalists much sooner, because their style is just far less compatible with the expected tropes of LitRPG. Some are more resistant. The barbarian archetype is all about being a brute that won't go down and hits hard. Not going down to spells and smashing through a magic shield feel pretty natural here, so arcane barbarians are a rarer concept. Non-combat classes also experience this. I briefly mentioned them being able to apply their skills to combat. If you think about it, in a world of magic, short of the system actively stopping you, why wouldn't non-combat classes be good at fighting? The blacksmith's strength score for swinging a hammer is just as good as barbarian swinging an axe. The alchemist can match the mage for int. They probably won't be as good as someone who has dedicated themselves to honing fighting ability, but in a world where abilities are part of the system and don't need to be constantly practiced to remain at peak capability, you have a lot more time to learn new things. Since a lack of choice is about as unpopular as being powered down in LitRPG, a system restrictive enough to force people to stay in their niche is often a hard sell to the audience, and as soon as they can step out a little, the nature of the genre makes things difficult. I picked alchemists and blacksmiths as examples here for a reason. They are two particularly popular classes for supposed non-combatants that can throw down with the rest of them. LitRPG can really struggle sometimes to figure out its game balance, and I think that comes from a place of having too wide of an influence. There's a lot of video games out there, and RPG is one of the broadest, most sweeping genres. When someone says RPG, are you thinking of something classic, where you control a party of heroes each with a dedicated role? Or do you picture Elden Ring, where most players specialize in something but can dabble in all sorts of weapons and magic if they're willing to spare a few stats? Or perhaps an MMO, where on the one hand you're the main character and can, in many modern games, experience a story by yourself, even as a healer, but the high-level endgame content requires a dedicated party with strict roles. A lit RPG about the protagonist of an Elder Scrolls game will have them grow to be unmatched in everything, and that's not a bad thing. It can feel perfectly reasonable and be a fun read. But the high level of discontent with these characters comes from stories that look at first like they're going to be a you need a full party sort of game, and unintentionally shift into a you're the protagonist of the world sort of game. It can feel especially bad when it happens later in a story where audience expectations are very firmly set. Because even if an author manages to navigate the early parts of balancing their game system and matching the right protagonist to the right game, they could fall prey to the great trap of infinite power scaling. Forget spellswords, romance, characterization, time and distance scales, or anything else. Perhaps the single most divisive topic in not only LitRPG, but adjacent genres like progression fantasy and cultivation novels, is what happens to characters and systems in very long-running series. Some people are here for the MC to beat everyone else up forever and love it. Others are very much not. And for them, a long-running series can find itself gradually ruined as the character experiences the slow carcinization of the specialist problem, even in a theoretically well-thought-out system. Because ultimately there is a limit to how much you can grow before you become a generalist by sheer scale of ability. Technically this can feel similar to non-combat classes being able to use their strengths in combat, but it comes from a slightly different place. The blacksmith is stepping slightly outside his class deliberately each time. First, he realizes that the skill that makes his hammer swing stronger to work metal hit a person's head just as well. Then he realizes that the enchantment he can add to a sword he makes for someone else would let him make a flaming hammer just as easily. Suddenly he's out being a full-on fighter decked out in self-made enchanted equipment. The accidental generalists from Scaling never tried to step outside their thing. They were content being a blacksmith. It's just that when you've ascended 5 realms and are crafting blades of legend from impossible metals in a forge powered by stars, it would be more absurd if they couldn't handle situations outside their immediate skill set. They're too powerful to have glaring weaknesses. Or at least they are if they want to be the main character. Because stories thrive on conflict, and conflict in a LitRPG means beating up people supposedly stronger than you when they come to cause trouble. So this is the specialist problem. In a world of infinite possibilities that almost seems like it's purpose-built for all sorts of wacky niche madness, we find ourselves inexorably pushed towards all-rounders ready to take on all comers. I was hesitant at first to call this a problem. For many, it's a feature of the genre. But the more I looked into when and why it happened, the more I felt like it was happening again and again accidentally and leaving audience members alienated. There's nothing wrong with having a spell sword, they are cool. But the single biggest piece of advice I ever give on this channel is that you can do anything you want, just know what you're doing and do it deliberately.